Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, guys. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome, everyone.
So we're just going to give it a couple of minutes, guys, because there's quite a few people joining. Well, we've got people from all over, from the US, from Cape Town, from Joburg, from London. Good evening, USA, and a very good morning, very early morning to London. Chicago, hi guys. Okay, so we're just going to give it a couple more minutes. Kerissa, is the sun shining in Cape Town?
It is beautiful in Cape Town today. It's always beautiful in Cape Town. It's the ex-Joburg chick.
You're very lucky. It's very cold in Joburg today. Well, it's not very cold. It's just crisp this morning. Winter's definitely coming.
It's been really amazing that I needed to get dressed at like 6:30 this morning, which was new because I mean I don't do that anymore.
No, my husband looked at me today. He was like, "Gosh, who is this woman that is coming out with makeup on?" I was like, "Hey, just because I haven't worn very much for the last year." Cool. Okay, we are slowly climbing. So guys, I'm conscious that it's the morning school run and there's a lot going on and before everybody starts their day. So we are going to kick off. Kerissa, are you happy with that? Excellent. Okay, so the way that we've structured today's webinar, guys, is it's a very informal session. What we are wanting to achieve is just to give you a bit more knowledge about WiCyS. And then Kerissa and I are going to have an informal chat about our roles in the cybersecurity industry with the aim to try and drive some awareness around women in cyber and just the opportunities that are in this industry for people coming into it. So firstly, thank you all for coming on. We only joined WiCyS about a week and a half ago, and we only started promoting this event 2 days ago, Kerissa, am I right? It was not, and we already have 70 people registered. So we are truly humbled and really grateful for everybody's support. It's a super exciting initiative, and I think by the response we've had, I think there's a lot of interest. So looking forward to taking it further. So guys, firstly, I just wanted to describe a little bit about WiCyS and what they do. Essentially, they were started in 2012 by Dr. Siraj at the Tennessee Tech University. It's a global organization, a movement that was started in the US to promote and accelerate the upliftment of women in cyber. Their objective is to help women network, promote themselves, get connected to mentors, and really just get shed more light on the industry and give more people the opportunity to come into it. So the platform has grown exponentially over the past couple of years. It's got affiliates all over the world. In Africa, we are the Southern African affiliate, and we cover countries like South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique, Namibia, Botswana, Mauritius, Lesotho, Swaziland, the whole of the southern area. There is an affiliate in Kenya that covers the east, and I believe there is an affiliate looking to start up in the west as well. So it's really nice to know that Africa is covered so well. But there are affiliates all over the world, in India, in Canada, in Europe. It's an amazing network, and it is so rich with diversity. They promote inclusion massively across the board. So, you know, I can very easily talk to somebody who's in a WiCyS affiliate in Chicago, for example, and get their opinion on what they're seeing in cyber in their area. What's really amazing about today is that Kerissa is a CISO. I also work in the cyber world, but I come from a completely different angle. And I think what's important is to really drive home the diversity in cybersecurity, and really just make the point that you don't have to be completely technical as well. WiCyS is really inclusive of everybody who's making an impact in cybersecurity. So I hope that opens up doors to a lot more people, because I know personally a lot of people who've registered for today who are not technical, but could be looking to come into this industry, and obviously that might seem like a barrier, but it definitely isn't. So what we Kerissa and I, it's quite a cool story, to be honest. So last year I was introduced to WiCyS by a friend of mine, Lauren. Thank you very much for that intro. And the discussion came about because I was looking to start up a community. I do that in my business today. I drive communities to better network people, but I was looking for a community for women. And I was trying to see if there was one in South Africa for a start. And what I found was that there were sporadic groups of women that were kind of joining, and they were talking to each other, and you know, they were getting together every now and then, but there wasn't anything that was specific for cybersecurity, and there wasn't anything that was a little bit more formal, and there certainly wasn't anything that was linked to the rest of the world. So when WiCyS came across my table, I was really excited about the potential that it had. It's a global business, it's supported globally, but it allowed us to be localized and have autonomy locally. So that was why I came across WiCyS. Kerissa, can you tell me how you came across it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kelly. It's really, I think, also a very interesting story. So in last year, I started to investigate. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, great. So in last year, I started to investigate, just like you, building a community of women in South Africa. I felt there was a huge gap, and I really wanted to do something in the space. I felt like I had an obligation to younger women to grow, great caliber of women into the field. And so I started looking last year at a number of opportunities, and also via a mutual friend, Anna Collard. I got introduced to WiCyS, and she said, well, you know what, they're looking for someone to start up a Southern Africa affiliate. Don't you want to contact them? And I guess the rest is history. And what was so cool was, as we were going through the registration process, Kelly sort of put her hand up and said, I want to start WiCyS. And we were like, great, great thought at the same time, let's do it together. And so that's the story of how WiCyS was born, really out of a need to want to do something more for women in Southern Africa. And I can't wait to see what we'll achieve with this initiative.
Well, based on this, I'm hoping a lot.
Exactly. So Kelly, can you tell me a little bit about, a business owner? That's really interesting. Tell me a little bit about your business. What's your day job like?
Okay, so like I said, I'm not technical. I do love technical, but I am not technical, and I love working with technical people. But my business, essentially, we audit and we design, we then build and we host engagement. So what I do is we specialize in engaging stakeholders within a technical business or a technical division within a large corporate. So for example, your division within Old Mutual, we would help you link your technologies and what you're trying to do in terms of keeping Old Mutual safe to the people within your organization and externally to your clients. My passion really, Kerissa, is around meaningful connection, because I just think we are in a hyper-connected world from a technology standpoint, but very often we forget that there's a human at the other end, and that we need to be designing for humans. And I think particularly in the cybersecurity world, we really need to be cognizant of the fact that if the technology is not adopted correctly, or if we don't keep that human-to-human engagement, the technology kind of falls over and doesn't achieve what we need it to achieve. So that is what I do in a nutshell. Tell me about your role at Old Mutual.
Yeah, so I'm Group CISO for Old Mutual Limited. We're across 13 African markets, a small operation in China. And I'm also one of the only group CISOs in financial services in South Africa. In I guess my day job, I manage, and I like to tell people, I think my day job is trust. I build trust for our customers and our stakeholders that they can rely on us when they need us the most. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of my job. But I think underneath that, there's a ton, and anyone that knows what goes into security knows what that portfolio looks like. So it's quite an interesting job on a day-to-day basis.
So why? I mean,
yeah. So we've got a poll coming up, Kelly. Do you want to maybe just tell everyone about the polls and how that's going to work?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So guys, we've got a couple of polls that are going to be coming up throughout the session. And we really would welcome you to get involved in that, because it gives us some insight into who is interested in WiCyS in Southern Africa, but just generally the type of audience that we're speaking to. We've also got a couple of questions that Kerissa and I have scripted beforehand in terms of what we want to get out of today's session, but it's a free-flowing session. So if you guys have got questions, please, you know, pop them into the chat and we will try and answer as many of them as we can. This is very much an engagement session. We want to speak to you as much as to each other. So please participate so we can make this something that builds a relationship rather than just a two-way conversation. Okie dokes. So Kerissa, what I was going to ask was, why don't you think we have more female CISOs? Or just generally, why don't you think we have more women in cybersecurity?
Yeah, Kelly, I think that's such a great question, and I do get asked that question quite often. I think there's two reasons that we don't have more females in, and it's not across the board. I think we've got quite a good coverage of women in cyber, and it's improving. You know, my team, for example, I'm 40% women in my team, so it's not that 50% yet, but we're getting there. But there are specific roles that we have very poor coverage of women, and it's typically the technical roles and it's the upper management roles. And so if you ask me, why do I think there's not more female CISOs? I think there's two big reasons. I think the first one is we don't put our hands up enough for these roles. I think there's a ton of opportunity out there, but we still tend to doubt ourselves. And you know, there's this great book called Lean In, and there's a quote in there that basically says, you know, a woman will only go for a role if she's sort of 60%. You know, if she's got 60% of if a guy will have 60% of what the job is asking, he'll apply for the role. But if a woman has only 100%, then she will apply for the role. So there's that discrepancy. The guy is saying, well, now I've got 60%, I can learn the 40%, it's worth applying. And we've got us ladies that are saying, well, I don't have 100% yet, so I'm not going to even try applying. So I think the first one is putting your hands up, you know, taking out those challenges. And I think a lot of times the question of, can I balance it? You know, I've got a family, I've got a work life type dynamic comes into play. And that leads to my second point. I don't think we make it very easy for women to be in cybersecurity. If you look at job specs out there, if you look at what people are looking for, it's everything in the kitchen sink. And in all honesty, no guy or no woman can fulfill those roles. And if you have someone that says, I can do 100% of that, you know, then I'd really like to meet them, because I don't know anyone who can. So I think that, you know, those two dynamics really play into why we don't have more female CISOs. We're not putting up our hands enough. And I think the ask for many people is so large that it becomes overwhelming. And that's playing into quite an interesting dynamic, I think.
So, okay, so Kerissa, you make a good point there. I mean, and I see the poll is basically saying that the majority of the people listening think that it's a lack of skills, which we know globally there is an extraordinary amount of opportunity. There's just not enough skill to fill it. So the question that I have for you is, do you think, going back to Brene Brown's comment in her book, do you think that as women, we seek external validation? Do you think that we need the validation of somebody else to say, okay, I think that you are good enough to do this? So even if, you know, we talk about the 60% of skill, that would mean that we'd have to have an internal knowledge that we have that 60%. But sometimes I'd argue not even that is enough, right? We need somebody to say, you know, categorically, you're getting this because we think you're the best. So this external validation, I mean, have you experienced that for yourself and for your team?
Of course, I think we all have at some point in time. And I think that little voice inside our head that says, I'm not good enough and I can't do this, the only way you quieten that voice is actually to have a really strong mentor that has your back. And that, you know, the person doesn't even need to be in cyber, they just have to believe in you. And that is so critical. That person that, you know, gives you a smack on the side of the head and go, what do you mean you can't do this? You're already doing it, you know? And I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of that, you know, in my own team. And I remember when the opportunity came about to take on this role, I had a lot of doubt in myself as well. So I had that exact same scenario playing out in my own head. And someone in my team said to me, but Kerissa, why are you doubting yourself? You can do this. All you need is great support from above and great support from below, and you've got both. And so why doubt yourself when you're completely capable of doing this? So that plays into, you know, and I became very conscious of it when I did it then. I wasn't conscious of it the rest of my career. I mean, you know, in earlier years, I wasn't conscious that I was doing that. I was actually saying, am I good enough for this? And it was amazing to go through that experience and then to have my eyes open to say, wow, I've actually been saying, maybe I'm not good enough. And that eye opener was just brilliant. So I think, you know, there's a lot of us that do it and we don't even realize we're doing it. It's just crazy. I mean, Kelly, you're a business owner. So I mean, that's also another dynamic. I mean, we don't have enough female business owners in cyber. You know, what do you feel about that?
No, we really don't. And I think it really sits with us. But, you know, today, the other thing that I think is really important about today is we're talking about women in cyber, but the role that men play in getting women into cyber is enormous. It's just as important as the role that women are playing to get themselves into cyber. So, you know, I think it's very hard. I think as a business owner, coming into this world, it's really difficult. I think very often, I mean, in South Africa particularly, 90% of the time I sit at a table and I'm the only woman there. I don't have the backing of a large organization. I don't have, you know, people above me who can say, you know, we put Kelly in this position because we believe in what she's doing. So I just think, yeah, it's the same thing. I think there's a lot of doubt that creeps in. I think it's insidious. I don't think you see it. I don't think it's very obvious. I think it's quite hard to identify. And I think we always place ourselves into a safe position as women. We want to play it safe. We don't want to go out there and, you know, fall down and graze our knees because, you know, we're girls, you know, we're meant to not do that. And I really break those boundaries. I detest them actually, because I just think that they stop us in a place that we should not be stopped. And I think I think the magic of watching a woman start to realize her potential is not only powerful for her, but the people that she affects in her proximity is incredible. So if anything, if we can, you know, just help uplift one person around us, the degrees that they, you know, that impact is massive. So yeah, owning a business is not it's not for the faint-hearted. But again, you know, you have a lot of people who support you and you align to them and you speak up and you lean in, you know, as hard as it might be. So on that note, Kerissa, you know, in talking about upliftment, one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you was, you often hear stories of women who haven't been uplifted by other women. And I think it's something that needs to be, I hear it addressed. I often don't hear it called out. So I hear it addressed in forums like this, perhaps, but I don't see it called out because, I mean, you said you've got 40% of your team is women. What are you doing to make sure that not only women in your business, but women in like senior management within Old Mutual are trying to uplift other women? And have you ever experienced a woman, you know, undermining you and, you know, trying to kind of scramble to the top on top of you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's so sad that, it's so sad that when you see someone doing that, it's almost such a lost opportunity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I said I was 40% women in my team. I think we've done a great job over many years, even before me, in encouraging women to be in security and all mutual. Do I feel like I give people opportunities? I think I'm all about opportunities. I'm all about giving people the platform. It's the greatest joy for me to see someone in my team up on stage somewhere doing something amazing, getting the recognition. It's the proudest moment for me. So that's just natural. That's my personality. And so I do think that that does encourage the ladies in our team, and some of them are online, so I'd love it if they comment, to stretch themselves, to put themselves out there. I've taken, quite a few of them up to our All Mutual board with me, to get that exposure. There's quite a few of them that know we often have conversations about women and dynamics in the workplace. And I think by honest conversation, like what we're having today, it's the start. Because I think also the women that are doing this, where they're trying to, hold someone down that's female, they're doing it out of a feeling of their own inadequacy and their own, sense of not being enough. And that sense of not being enough is actually driving all of this behavior that is unhealthy. So just by acknowledging it, having a conversation about it, making the person aware of it, it's almost a light bulb that can go on, that they can become more aware of the way they're behaving. But it takes bravery from us to have that conversation. So in my mind, you have to tackle that experience by experience. You have to tackle it with person by person, because, if you watch it from the sidelines and you don't address it, it just ends up festering. And that one person can impact so many people's careers that, the knock-on impact is just way too severe. And Kelly, I'm actually thinking about a related story. It's not specifically on promoting women, but I thought I'd just share it here because it talks about, pointing out the misconception. I was in one of our African countries a few years ago, and I was in a meeting with the CEO. I had traveled with a male colleague, and we walked into the meeting, and every time I spoke, the CEO would turn to the male colleague and speak to him. And so I started feeling really uncomfortable. And, the meeting went on and I felt more and more uncomfortable. And by the end of the meeting, I was thinking, jeepers, this guy's the CEO. I was still, a risk manager somewhere lowly down. And should I actually, bring this up? Is it, should I not bring it up? Because it's a stakeholder I need to manage. And I really want to have a good impression. And so at the end of the meeting, I pulled him aside, and I didn't do it in front of everyone, but I pulled him aside and I said, every time I asked a question, you addressed my male colleague. It made me feel slightly uncomfortable. And he said, oh my goodness, Kerissa, I didn't know I was doing that. So he said, I actually had no idea that I was actually doing it. And we went to lunch after, and we were sitting next to each other in lunch and having a merry chat. And he said to me, I've been thinking about what you said to me, and I realized why I do it. In my culture, I don't address women that in my family directly. So I've been brought up with the sense that I don't address females that are not of my family directly. And I think that is filtered into the workplace. So he was coming at me from a sense of respect. And I was perceiving it as a sense of disrespect. And so having that conversation, just, and we're great friends. I mean, we still chat. He's still in our mutual, I'm still in our mutual. Great conversations. We've got a great relationship. But if I had not addressed that situation up front, I can guarantee now that I would have always had the sense that he thinks less of me. And he doesn't believe in me and he doesn't trust me. So all that doubt would have come back in if I had not addressed the question. And so coming back into your question about how do we actually tackle women that are not promoting women, I believe that is the path. And I believe that we will change some and we won't be able to change others, but I believe we have a duty to actually try and do it. So I don't know if that makes sense, Kelly.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important, and especially to the younger people listening, you've got to start somewhere. So you might not get it right the first time, you might not get it right the second or third time, and you might feel like a complete fool when you do address these things, but you will get better at it. And I think that one thing that I've found that's been really useful for me is using less words. So you know, try and make your sentences 6 to 10 words long, and then pause. Because the power of that, you know, as women, we tend to over-explain things because we're trying to justify our position. And I think using, you know, 6 to 10 word sentences, I mean, I challenge everyone to try this. It's flipping hard. And then stop is actually a really powerful way, because men, you know, they talk in much less language. So that's something that I found that's been really powerful. Articulating, you know, what our point is also very important in a situation like that, where you feel like you're being overridden. So we've got another poll that's just come up, guys, and we're talking about what's attracted you to cybersecurity. Let us know what you think. While everybody's answering that, Kerissa, a couple of other things I wanted to ask, please. To any woman who's looking at cybersecurity as an industry that they, you know, want to go into, what are the top 3 pieces of advice that you would share with them?
Thanks, Kelly. So I spoke earlier about, you know, organizations throwing everything in the kitchen sink into the job spec. So my first piece of advice is nobody is always on all the time. So you would die if you were always on all the time. So, you know, when you read this job spec and you go, jeepers, can I really do this? Getting into the role and finding your own balance. And I'll speak from personal experience. I'm a mom of 2 kids. And so I have to make time for my family. I know I would regret it if I don't. So you will typically hear me say to my team, you know, I'm going to quickly take my daughter to gymnastics, or I'm going to take my son to karate, or my daughter to karate. And you know, so I will go and do those things, and I'll make the time to do those things. You'll also hear me multitasking quite a bit. So I'm going to pick up the kids at school. I'm on my phone in the car. And it's completely normal. And what, you know, I think what COVID has done is it's given us a really brilliant opportunity, because it's become so normal to do these everyday things, which when we were in the office, we were, you know, potentially removed from. It's given us a beautiful opportunity to say, I can actually do both. Yes, it takes a bit of logistics. Yes, it does take a bit of juggling. But if you put those boundaries in and do it, it's great. And what I'm starting to see is it's not just the women that are doing it. It's the men that are doing it as well. So I mean, I was in a call the other day with a regulator, and someone in our team said, well, actually, sorry guys, he's a male. I'm going to go and pick up my son from school. Perfectly normal. The conversation carried on, and that normalizing of human life is so important, and it's starting to happen. So the first point I would say is, when you look at the job spec and you think they want everything in the kitchen sink, realize that a human being is going to fill that role. And a human being has a family, and a human being has a personal life, and a human being has constraints on them, the same as you and I do. So, you know, don't look at the role and go, actually, you know, I can't give that much of myself. Go into the interview and negotiate what you want out of the role. Say, look, I'm willing to, you know, you're saying 24/7 to be available, happy to do that, but actually, you know, I have these boundaries. I will still go and pick up my kids. I will still go and do X, Y, and Z. And that's your strength. That doesn't show weakness. And that's the second point that I want to make. What we classify as strength and weakness, I think, needs to be relabeled. We classify being a mom. We classify being a woman. We classify being a daughter. We classify being a sister as actually being weak and not allowing us to do our jobs. I actually think it's a strength. And the reason I think it's a strength is because I think we bring so much of compassion and warmth into what we do. And Kelly, to your point of understanding the human element, I think women understand it a lot better. We've got a lot of men that are very in tune with it, and they do completely understand it, but I think naturally we understand it better. And so that second point I would make is, really look for how you bring yourself into your role. Make it okay for yourself to be yourself in your role. And I think that will help us a lot. I've lost the third thought. Sorry.
I think you make a really good point. I think managing expectations, Kerissa, people don't talk about it enough. And I think it's something that we need to consistently try. I often talk about the 1% with my clients, because engagement, I think, is something that you can't do it, you can't get it right overnight. There isn't one big change that you're going to make that's going to make a massive impact. But if you do set a boundary, and my so my favorite quote is "Start as you mean to go on," and that's just what you're saying. So, you know, at the beginning, put your boundaries in place. Even if it's just one boundary, the people that you're talking to will get used to the fact that you do put boundaries in place. And you can add boundaries from there. But if you don't put any boundaries in place, what happens is it's very difficult to then put them in, you know, after the fact. And then, you know, you get labeled as somebody who's dramatic or, you know, just over the top or something like that when you're now trying to put your boundaries in place later on. So I think you make a great point. I think it's very important for people to do that right from the beginning, particularly women. Just looking at our results. So
did we show our poll results?
Yeah, so it just basically it says what attracted you to cybersecurity, and the main result was we transitioned into the role. So that's a really good, you know, I think that's really interesting. A lot of people that are in cybersecurity, because of the skill shortage, were general technologists, for example, and they've now transitioned into the role. From like Kerissa, from a training perspective and from a knowledge of, you know, perspective, where do you think, where's the best place that people can upskill?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of cybersecurity is that it's so diverse. And I was saying, I said to a number of people, the background that I have in my team, I've got ex-military, I've got ex-banking, I've got ex-marketing, and these people have all ported their old careers into cybersecurity because cyber is so broad. I mean, the guy that runs my awareness campaigns is actually an ex-marketing person. And his knowledge of what makes people behave in a certain way, or how they actually, how you get people to do, you know, behave in a different way, is so valuable in cybersecurity, but you wouldn't make the immediate link. So I think the opportunities to take skills that you didn't even realize you have and apply it in security is so great that it's really a brilliant opportunity for anyone trying to get into cyber. And if you're in cyber, it gives you so much of breadth of growth. I mean, there's so many things, different things to do in cyber to be able to move around. And it's if I think about my own experience, I've pretty much done, I think, everything that they used to do in cybersecurity. I've done the hardcore techie. I used to configure firewalls back in the day. And I see we've got some of our and some of our colleagues on here that actually support some of my systems. So a big shout out to them. They actually still do configure firewalls, and they're female. But I used to do that back in the day. I used to do risk management. I used to do architecture. I used to do, you know, I've done pretty much governance, the whole suite. And what I can tell you is that there's so much of opportunity there to grow even within cyber, that it's really, once again, putting your hand up and taking those opportunities. But Kelly, I'm actually, you know, talking about the technical roles and talking about roles that we stretch ourselves in. Have you ever had someone assuming you don't know something and sort of mansplaining to you, kind of saying, you know, trying to explain to the woman in the room?
Yeah, all the time, all the time. And again, so I find that our immediate response is one of two things. It's either fight or flight. So we either, as women, I think we either come out of the blocks punching, which is usually my response. I kind of want to go for the jugular. But you do get a lot of women who kind of, who retract and who kind of curl back and go, okay, I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. Now, what I'd really like to make people aware of is that women and men can do this to other women, particularly because we tend to come across as weaker, perhaps. And I don't even think it's weakness. I just think that we are perhaps a little bit more genteel. But I think what we have to have an awareness around explanation. And the one area where I really find it happens, Kerissa, is in the tech area. So I think, you know, for people who are listening, what I've found is there's some technical people who will kind of say it to you, and if they don't, you can see that there's an irritation if you don't understand it. And I get that, some techies are kind of people who just should, they just backroom people, they're mushrooms, they're like, we don't want to really speak to other human beings. But I would say that if you are trying to get a point across, particularly in security, because I think, users are either your biggest threat or your greatest defense. So, from a female perspective, particularly, just be conscious of when you are talking to somebody and how you're explaining, and make sure that they understand it. And you might have to say it 1 or 2 or 3 different times, but particularly in cyber, Kerissa, I found that it is so important to be able to get your point across. I mean, I had a situation yesterday where I had a meeting with a client, and I was giving some very basic solutions around some stuff that we had uncovered within the engagement audit that we were doing. And it came across as like very basic, like super basic. And I could feel that he was thinking, what is this? This is like, you're telling me to do stuff that like should be being done. But he was missing the point of it being, once those 1% cumulative actions were done over time, there would be a massive impact to his bottom line. So what I did was I came away from it and I gave it some thought. I had a chat to my business partner and I was like, I feel like the message hasn't landed here. And it's really important that it does land. He needs to understand that I'm giving him gold here, but I clearly haven't articulated it correctly. And in cybersecurity, I think this is so important, particularly from a tech perspective, because if the people that you're talking to, I mean, you will know when you're trying to do a change management, when you're trying to get people to adopt a cybersecurity habit or methodology within your organization. Phishing is a good example of that, being aware of phishing emails and things. You need to come back to the drawing board and go, okay, how do I get this point across? How do I speak their language so they understand that what I'm saying needs to land in order to help them? And I think that's just something, going back to the drawing board, not being scared to kind of go back and say, listen, I'm concerned that this didn't land. Let me say it in a different way. Am I clear? And again, I go back to articulation, Kerissa. I think often we don't articulate ourselves as women very well because we feel like we have to over-explain. And the moment you do that, somebody either jumps into the driver's seat and goes, okay, let me just tell you what it is. And you're like, no, I understand. I'm just not, obviously. And I think practicing that is really important. Really important.
That's such a great comment, Kelly. As you're talking about it, I'm thinking it's about these stories we tell ourselves. I can't explain this well enough. I don't know the technical information. And I'm wondering if we also read into this mansplaining thing and whether we should actually double click on it, because I'm wondering if, whether it's a female, and you're right, it's either females do it as well. I've had lots of women say to me, but let me tell you how. And I'm like, it's okay, I understand how. But, so it's not necessarily a male thing. I think it's picking up on that. And we're very sensitive for nuance, I think, that I don't know. So I think we pick it up very quickly as well. So our own sensitivity to it is also probably playing into how we react to it, how we feel about it. Someone could be coming from a good space, actually just trying to explain something to you, and your reaction, could make it, a good scenario, a bad scenario. And I'm actually thinking about a story that I often tell the story. About 2 years ago, I was at an event for young. It was a Women's Day event as well, and we had a bunch of young girls from Khayelitsha that had come in to a cybersecurity event. They were in high school, and they were so excited, and we treated them. We got them little goodie bags, and it was such a great event. And during lunch, I was sitting next to one of the girls, and she said to me, "I'm so excited, I want to be in cyber." And I was like, "Oh, great, this is exactly what I want to hear. I want to hear about these stories about young children being excited about it," because actually at high school, we have so little knowledge about cybersecurity. Our teachers are not enabled with IT knowledge. So be able to pass that on to students, I think they're doing, we've got this vicious cycle where we're not breaking this mold of exposing children to technology. And so their interest in it isn't there. So to hear this young woman say, "I want to be in cyber," I was so inspired and I was so excited. And I said to her, "So what are your teachers saying to you?" And she's like, "No, my teachers are saying go for it." And I'm like, "How are your grades?" And she's like, "No, my grades are brilliant." I'm like, okay, great, everything's sounding really good. And then her face drops. And so I'm like a bit worried because now this automatic change of super excited to super down. And I say to her, so what's wrong? And she says, well, as soon as I go home, my family and my neighbors tell me that I have one role in life and technology is not it. And my heart it broke. At that, I actually paused. I didn't know how to respond to her. My heart just broke because I was thinking, here's this girl with all this passion and this energy and this excitement, and you could see it in her face that she wants to do this and she's driving to do this. And she goes home to a community that's not ready for it yet. And I think it is a story that it still exists in pockets in South Africa, in Southern Africa, in Africa. It's not as pervasive perhaps as it used to be, but it's still there. And I don't think we can underestimate the knock-on impact of that on encouraging women into fields of technology and cyber. Because we've already got preconceived notions in our mind that it's difficult and I can't do this. And now on top of that, we have our family and friends or teachers or whoever it is at the back of your head saying, well, you shouldn't be doing this. And we spoke about that mentorship, for people in middle careers and senior careers and even starting out in cyber. But when you go even further back into the schooling system, the spark of interest to ignite people towards technology is actually being stumped before they even get to university. And it's so horrible.
So it's really what you're saying, and it's a very interesting point, Kerissa. You're saying that whilst we can uplift, so this is around general awareness in cyber, which I think is so interesting. So I have, in my family, if there's a breach or something that relates to like Netflix or something, I always kind of send a message to them and I say, guys, just change your password or whatever, basic stuff. But these young minds that are being fostered and developed by people who don't like, so we can tell those young minds all we like, that cybersecurity is the way to go. But if the grandmother or the aunt or the mum or the dad or whoever it is that is bringing that child up doesn't understand the benefits of cybersecurity and the importance of it from a global perspective. I mean, this is the new battleground. If you want to be a superhero, this is the career that you want to be in. Like this is where you want to be fighting. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in that career? This is the digital police force. So I think that when we talk about uplifting women in cyber, we need to go further back, like you say, into the school area. But we should be doing more with the caretakers of these children, of these young minds, to get them to understand, because then when they go home, they will be encouraged just as we are encouraging them to get involved. And I think that's often, that it's breaking those stigmas around women having to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. And yes, you're right, we've come a long way, but I would argue we've still got a hell of a long way to go. And I think you're definitely right. I see somebody made a comment about running security internships in organizations to give young people a startup. Do you guys have something like that at Old Mutual?
Yeah, we do. And I'm so proud of what we're doing, actually. So we've taken on, we plan to take on 10 grads. So I think we're at 9 at the moment. So our stats are not completely up to date. We've grown it consistently year on year. So we've taken on more graduates every single year into cybersecurity. So if I think back 5 years, we didn't take on any. Then we took on 1 or 2. And this year is our biggest number yet, which is 10. And to take on 10 new people, I think is really great. We've got a very well-constructed program, and some of the ladies that are in the program are listening online, that really puts people through both the emotional and soft skills of being an employee, as well as the technical background that you need to be able to do your job. And my team is so passionate about getting these people on, and I'm seeing such a huge value and so much of energy coming in from these really great minds that are bursting with energy and passion to make a difference. So we've got quite a good program, and a lot of other corporates do. If you are a student or you have kids and they're interested in cyber, definitely check out these programs. They are really quite phenomenal. I mean, 2 years ago, I think we sent, because of COVID, we couldn't do it last year, we sent our graduates to India for a month, and they got some training on technology with one of our partners. There's really great opportunities out there, and we're really investing a lot in growing talent. And it's also such another important point, Kelly, that I'd like to speak about. Organizations tend to poach from each other. We tend to take security skills from each other. And if you think about people, they just end up rotating between new companies. And it's such a horrible experience because you never have enough skills. So we have to create these skills. We can't assume that the skills will be there and we can just take it from somebody else. We have to create it. And so one of my missions in this year is to make that possible, to be able to create more skills. And there's a couple of things that I'm doing. The one, like I said, is the graduate program, and we're investing in this, and we're partnering with all our partners to be able to upskill these guys as they come in. And there's a lot of goodwill to do it. I mean, a lot of our partners out there going, great initiative, we want to do it, we want to build skills in the country. So, I mean, just collectively pulling people together, it lifts the load on any individual person. And that's actually why I like WiCyS so much, because it's an opportunity for all of us to do a little piece, but in a whole, to be able to make a big difference. And we were talking about that grassroots level startup. I was actually in a conversation with the lead from WiCyS Ontario a few weeks ago. We didn't know each other. We actually just ended up on the same panel by chance. And she introduced herself as the lead from the president of WiCyS Ontario. And I was like, great, we're starting up a Southern Africa affiliate. And she was saying that they had started with brownies and Girl Guides. And one of the people in the team that she worked with for WiCyS Ontario actually brought up the idea. She was like, my kids in brownies and Girl Guides, can we do this? And so they built this day where they brought brownies and Girl Guides into a university, and they trained them on cybersecurity using fun games. But what was so cool about it, she said, was as girls were leaving, they were saying to their parents, I know how to make a secure password. I know how to do this. So that knock-on impact into that community was just amazing. So, I mean, and I think that the whole story about WiCyS is how do we find these tiny little areas where we can make these changes, but they will have this massive knock-on impact. And so we'll probably never know the full potential of what we've done, but planting that little seeds in little places will help create the movement that we want to see. And when I shared this talk online a few days ago on LinkedIn, one of the ladies in my team said to me, she said, be the change you want to see in the world. And I thought that is so powerful. And that's what when I shared it, I actually shared that. And I know she's online, so a big shout out to her. I think she's just amazing. But so I see, be the change that you want to see in the world is so powerful. And we all feel like we don't have the capacity or the time or the energy to do it. But if we do just a tiny little piece, the full picture ends up being something so amazing.
Absolutely. I think also, just to add to that, I think what I think is very important for people to understand about women coming into the tech world, we naturally have good empathy, we have good emotional intelligence, and we are agile. We have to be, right? So a mum needs to be able to juggle many balls at one time. We need to be able to empathize with people around us, and that's really what drives our actions. And from an emotional intelligence perspective, it's so critical in a technical world to have that understanding from a human perspective to make sure that the tech lands. So I think, to everybody who's asked, there's quite a few questions, and I think we'll go into a couple of questions now. But one thing that's really important to drive home today is to understand that as females, just by who we are and by our sex, we have advantages that we need to bring into this industry. We have advantages that we need to showcase in this industry for it to be more effective. We need the EQ, we need the agility, we need the empathy to make sure that we keep the world safer. And to your point about making small pockets of change, if we all add up our 1%, we're going to get to 100% really quickly. And we're going to see a massive change come into what we're trying to achieve in Southern Africa, but just globally as well. So Kerissa, we've got 10 minutes left. I can't believe we've got 10 minutes left. So there was a couple of questions, and I just want to say a big shout out to Jill. Thank you for managing all the questions and everything in the background. You've been a legend. So there were a couple of questions, Kerissa, that were asked. Are there any resources that are free and available to access around cybersecurity learning?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great resources. So most vendors actually have a baseline training. And if you just go onto YouTube, what's really, I love this story. I was on also another panel, and I was with a speaker that said her colleague is the world-renowned pen tester on medical devices. So she's like she's from South Africa. She is like the go-to person on medical devices, pen testing. And how she got there was she started watching YouTube videos. She worked in the medical practice, so she worked on medical devices, but she knew nothing about pen testing then. And she kind of had this worry in the back of her head that something was wrong, something was going to happen. And so she just started with YouTube videos. She just watched a whole ton of YouTube videos, and she started playing around with stuff. And it's about this experimentation. I think we often think that I need this big fancy certification or this big fancy qualification. It's actually experience that gets you there. So, I mean, try it, play around with it, volunteer. So go onto YouTube, go onto Coursera. Coursera's got a lot of great content, and some of it's also free. A lot of the big security organizations out there give a baseline certification or baseline course that is free. So you can actually go and do those things, and it'll cost you nothing, and it'll maybe you'll maybe understand where you're interested. Because I think also investing in a big bucket of money for something, and then you realize, well, this is not for me, is not the best option. So maybe just try free resources, YouTube, those base courses, Coursera, etc. Try those base courses and see what interests you. Because as soon as you spark that passion, like this woman that went, oh goodness, I want to pen test medical devices, I don't know how, and she sort of just taught herself and started doing it, and is now one of the forerunners in the world. I mean, that's a great success story out of free material. So I think that opportunity is definitely there.
Yeah, I think there's also another resource, Cybrary, I think, also is an online learning platform, and they do have a lot of free resources, guys, and they also have a couple of paid resources, but they are very affordable. So, Kerissa's absolutely right. Do a couple of free courses, look at YouTube, understand where you want to go, and then you can decide where you invest your time and your money. But again, this industry is not difficult to get into. I mean, it's sad that people think that it's such a difficult thing because, the minute you say technical or the minute you say maths or anything like that, I mean, I even said at the beginning, I was like, I'm not technical. I do understand quite a bit. And it's just through osmosis that I've been in the industry and I've learned about the technical side. So don't be discouraged by that, because there is a lot of free resource. And in fact, because there's such a big skill shortage, a lot of the vendors and a lot of organizations like Kerissa's are looking to get more people on board, even at a very junior level, so that they can get them skilled up so they have the resource. Kerissa, a couple of other questions. What other opportunities are there for experienced people in other fields who want to transition, but are above internship and the grad? Okay, so let me answer that, because I'm not in the technical side of there is a lot of opportunity to transition from any other field and to get into the cybersecurity world. In fact, I just heard a story yesterday about, again, a medical doctor who has just gone into the cybersecurity world. She just was getting frustrated from a medical perspective and saw that there was quite a lot of the medical world is digitized now, especially with a pandemic like COVID. We need to digitize a lot of our medical facilities and resources. So absolutely, there is an easy way to transition in. What I would say is that it doesn't matter how high you are in another role, and Kerissa, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it is always better to start from the foundation in cybersecurity. Like Kerissa mentioned earlier, she started right she's done everything from configuring firewalls all the way through. You're not going to go from the head of HR to a CISO. It's just not going to happen. You need to be committed to understanding the base layers, and then you need to start from the bottom, but you can very quickly move your way up. It's not going to take you, 15 years to get to a significant role. You can start making an impact right from the bottom. Am I right?
Yeah, and I think mid-career people actually bring such great EQ and such great business knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the passions of mine. I've started up a group called Hacking into Cybersecurity on LinkedIn. And we're talking about how do we get mid-career people that have either lost their jobs or unhappy in their jobs into cybersecurity. And I'll make 2 points here. I think the first one is you've probably done some security stuff in your job, whether it is, being exposed to a phishing email or receiving some awareness content or being in some training, or you're an administrator of a system and you actually do security in part of your job. So the first point I would say is if you're trying to get into cyber, all of the roles out there are going to give you an arm and a leg of what you need as a requirement to get your CV in the door. Showcase the experience that you have within your individual role. So a lot of people will just go, I've been an HR consultant, or I've been a system administrator. That's not going to get you in the door because you can't see the security experience, and I can't see the passion for security that is there. If you tell me, actually, I've done 3 self-learning courses, I've done this, blah, 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 and actually in my jobs, I've got that component that is focused on security and that component, then I can see there is something that you've done in the past, but also that you're taking initiative to do things to encourage yourself into cybersecurity. So I think it's about how you position your CV and really making the experience that you have speak to the role. So don't just go and send out a generic CV. It's not going to even get past the person that's doing the initial screening. And then the second thing I would say is that, like Kelly said, I mean, going from something as diverse as HR to security, it's great, but it's going to take some doing. And you need to be able to explain very crisply when you're in that door, when you're in that interview, why your past experience makes you powerful in the new role. So HR, for example, you understand people. You would be great in awareness. You would be great in, stakeholder engagement. So, I mean, showcase that in light of what we're applying for. Don't just go, I've done an HR job and I've managed 5,000 people and blah, blah. You've got to tailor your experience to the role that you're applying, both in your CV and in your interview. Otherwise, it's very difficult sitting on the other end to be listening to you to see how I could fit you into the picture. But if you make that picture clear for me and spark that interest that, wow, okay, this person has potential and they're taking steps to be able to better themselves so that we can get them into this role, it's a very different conversation.
Okay, cool. I think we've run out of time, which I think we could keep going. We've got 2 minutes on the clock, and I know that the webinar ends on the hour. But perhaps just to finish, guys, there are a number of different options to join WiCyS. We know that the cost is prohibitive due to COVID. There are options for that, so just get in touch with us. You can go to our social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and our email is on there, so you can get in touch with us and we can inquire around the availability for COVID relief and things like that. Students, it's free, so you can participate and get involved in the community for free. Kerissa, is there anything else that we need to share? I think we might need to do another one of these and involve some of the community because it's really interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think it's been such an amazing, we got all of this up and running really quickly. Like Kelly said, we've only been launched for a week and about 2 weeks. So, I mean, it's really amazing that we were able to put this out today and to be able to engage with all of you. We're so excited about this initiative, and we hope that you are excited as well. And we hope you understand a little bit more about WiCyS. And we hope that you guys will join us so we can make something really great out of this for all the other women in Southern Africa.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions, but we will actually take some of those questions and answer them on our social media. So follow that and we can give you some resources and links there. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Have an awesome day and a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.